Okay, today we're going to talk about the best black backgrounds that came with the Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate set. While their original purpose was to act as partner commanders for the many legendary creatures in the set, the pairs often led to disappointingly old strategies with little novelty added to the classic D&D characters. However, these enchantments are very inexpensive cards with equally low mana values that give your commanders additional utility with whatever strategy you may be going for, and should earn a place in the 99 of any of those decks. First, as always, let's start with the backgrounds that aren't useful in a general sense. Criminal Past is very niche. You'll want to use this background if you need your commander to have a high power and you're in a self-mill strategy. There are very few commanders who would fit this criteria, and none of them are great commanders themselves. Nadir, Agent of Dusknell, Bladewing, Deathless Tyrant, and Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame are a few that fit this very narrow criteria. Cultist of the Absolute is almost as niche. You want to swing with your commander, and at the same time you want to be making creature tokens or throw away creatures to sacrifice to the ability so you don't have to sacrifice your commander. Lathril, Blade of the Elves would be the best commander that this could work with, while Beledros Witherbloom and Elenda the Duskrose are a distant second and third choice. Now for the goodies. Agent of the Iron Throne costs 2 and a black and says commander creatures you own have. Whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. If you're making an aristocrats deck with creatures, artifacts, or both, this card should be on the list right next to Blood Artist and Viscera Seer. But its addition of artifacts to that strategy opens up treasure and other artifact themes that could benefit from this effect. Artifact aristocrat strategies already run Marionette Master as a win con, but Agent of the Iron Throne has the benefit of potentially being on the battlefield much earlier, allowing for much more damage to be done over time. Teysa Karlov, Elis Ilkor, and Korvald are all traditionally strong commanders for creature-based aristocrat strategies, while Brea, Kesket, and Megatron could run artifact aristocrat strategies easily, and all of them would benefit from having Agent of the Iron Throne in the 99. Agent of the Shadow Thieves costs 1 and a black and says commander creatures you own have. Whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. It gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. This background is all about helping your Voltron commanders attack easier, while getting bigger at the same time. The caveat is, of course, you have to attack the opponent with the most life to get the benefit. But in a casual game of fun commander, spreading the love around so everyone can play the game rather than eliminating a single target ASAP should make it easier for you and fun for everyone at the table anyway. Skullbriar decks would love this. When it deals combat damage to a player, it gets a counter, and when it goes anywhere else other than your hand or library, it gets to keep all of those counters. Thantis decks focus on making all creatures attack, and if a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, Thantis gets a counter. Isshin decks would get 2 counters instead of 1, which isn't terrible. And again, Lathril decks would get even better. It gives her a counter and makes her almost impossible to deal with in combat, which gets you more elves as a result. Give her vigilance and your opponents are going to have a very bad time. Megatron can use the Death Touch in a unique way. On the attack, Megatron lets you sacrifice an artifact, and then it deals damage equal to that artifact's mana value to a target. Since you're attacking, if you have this background out, he has Death Touch and gets bigger. That means you deal 1 damage to a creature to kill it when you sack the artifact, and then the rest of that damage goes directly to your opponent's face. There are quite a few ways to benefit from Agent of the Shadow Thieves, and I'm sure I missed many more. But that alone should be reason enough to include that in the 99 of any of those decks. And speaking about things I missed, why don't you hit that like button and sub to the channel if you like what you've seen so far and don't want to miss what I do in the future. I'd really appreciate it, especially since only about 6% of viewers are actually subbed to the channel right now. Thanks. Scion of Halaster says commander creatures you own have. The first time you would draw a card each turn, instead look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your graveyard and the other back on top of your library, then draw a card. This one fits very nicely into any self-milling strategy you might be going for. After writing this, I realized how helpful this particular background would be in my Magar deck, so I threw one in really quick. It'll allow me to see 2 cards during my draw step and take what I need in the moment. Then I can put the most useful instant or sorcery into the graveyard to animate later with Magar, maybe even in that same turn, basically drawing me 2 cards. Sidisi, Muldrotha, Sir Conrad the Grim, and the list for this particular strategy goes on and on. There are a lot of fantastic commanders that could use this particular background. And even if self-mill isn't your primary strategy, having a bit of card selection can save you from a string of bad luck with land drops or finding something that'll help you in whatever game state you find yourself in. It might be worth the slot just for that, so consider that when looking at this card for your deck. Haunted One says, commander creatures you own have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, it and other creatures you control that share a creature type with it each get +2/+0 and gain Undying until end of turn. Once again, we have a background that suits a Voltron strategy, or at the very least one that makes it easier for your commander to attack your opponents if that's a requirement. However, unlike our other options, Haunted One fits more neatly into tribal or semi-tribal decks. The precon that this comes in is a testament to that thought process. Captain Nagathrod is simply a horror tribal with a benefit to horrors dealing damage to the opponent. Vampires and zombies make it an easy include, but more recently we again have Lathril for the elves, and with the right support from the upcoming Phyrexian invasion, and I think I've said this before, Phyrexian Angel Horror Tribal would be a fun deck led by Atraxa. The protection and durability that this enchantment offers can be very handy if you decide to use a commander that has a tap ability and ways to untap it and tap it again as a defensive measure. Lathril fits perfectly in this category, so you should definitely find a spot for Haunted One if you have one available. Now that I think about it, having a commander with a tap ability to give your tribal creatures Undying during a board wipe can probably be a pretty powerful protection trick. Haunted One is the most expensive background out of all of the colors. It's at about $2, and looking at some of its applications, it should be easy to see why. And that's it for the black backgrounds. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below, and while you're there, as usual, let me know if you use any of these backgrounds in your decks also. The red backgrounds are next, so look forward to that. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike it if you disliked it, and until next time, I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.